Ambassador Sarah Hayes had spent months preparing for this mission. The Galactic Empire, a sprawling authoritarian regime spanning thousands of star systems, had long been wary of humanity's rapid technological development. But peace and the opportunity for mutually beneficial trade was within reach if she could secure it. Sarah stepped off the shuttle at the heart of the Empire's capital, a towering ancient city carved into the bones of a dying world. The air was thick with smog, the sky a muted gray, and the buildings loomed like giant, silent sentinels. Her reception had been cold, but she had anticipated that. The Empire was not known for its warm welcomes. Her entourage was small, just a handful of aides and translators. Despite the risks of traveling so deep into enemy territory, she had insisted on going alone. She knew the importance of this mission. Her presence was a statement that humanity wasn't afraid to meet the Empire on its own turf. After all, Earth had never been anyone's underdog. The human race had earned its place in the stars, and Sarah was determined to make sure the Empire recognized that. The banquet hall was a grand affair, a massive high-ceilinged room bathed in the golden light of hundreds of floating chandeliers. The long table at the center of the hall was lined with the Empire's ruling class, officials who dressed in black and red military uniforms, their faces as impassive as statues. The Imperial Senate's Chancellor, Rovan Vass, a tall, thin man with piercing eyes, stood at the head of the table, awaiting her arrival. "Ambassador Hayes, welcome," Vass said with a cool smile, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of imperial authority. He motioned for her to take a seat. "We are honored to host you." The dinner started with a show of formalities. Small talk, empty pleasantries. Sarah's sharp eyes scanned the room. She knew the Empire's reputation for cruelty and manipulation. They had a history of breaking deals, of turning allies into enemies with a well-timed betrayal. But tonight, her mission was simple: secure a trade agreement, a framework that would ensure peace. No backdoor deals, no hidden agendas. She wasn't naive enough to think that was how the Empire operated, but she had to believe in the possibility of diplomacy. As the meal progressed, Sarah's suspicions began to rise. Vass had been too smooth, too rehearsed. There was something in his gaze, a glint of something darker. She had no proof, but instinct told her that something wasn't right. Perhaps they were going to offer peace, on their terms. That was the Empire's way, after all. She barely noticed when the door to the hall opened again, revealing a large contingent of Imperial guards, dressed in their full battle armor. A murmur rippled through the room, and Sarah stood, but it was already too late. The guards moved swiftly, their weapons drawn. She didn't have time to react. The first shot hit her square in the chest. The room erupted into chaos. Sarah crumpled to the floor, her eyes wide in shock. As she gasped for breath, she managed one final, strangled cry. "They're hiding something." Her vision blurred, and the room went silent. In her final moments, Sarah Hayes realized the truth. Peace had never been their intention. The news of Sarah Hayes' assassination hit Earth like a hammer blow. Within hours, every major news outlet was broadcasting the grim footage, her body lifeless on the polished floor of the Imperial Banquet Hall. Her final words echoed across the planet, a chilling, unanswered question that would haunt the leaders of Earth for days to come. They're hiding something. Back on Earth, the political storm was immediate. The United Earth Republic's capital city, New York, was thrown into turmoil. President Jack Daniels stood before a sea of cameras, flanked by military advisors and intelligence officers, trying to keep his composure. But the anger in his eyes betrayed his resolve. This wasn't just an attack on a diplomat. It was an assault on humanity itself. The investigation into Sarah's death was swift, but no less damning. Earth's intelligence agencies had intercepted communications from the Imperial capital, messages that clearly indicated the Empire's involvement in her murder. Yet the Empire denied any responsibility, claiming it was the work of rogue agents within their ranks. The story was implausible, even for the Empire. There was no ambiguity. The murder had been planned. The Empire had ordered it. President Daniels convened a council of Earth's military and political leaders. The room was tense, a thinly veiled powder keg ready to ignite. General Vanessa Cooper, head of the United Earth Defense Force, spoke first, her voice calm but firm. "We've fought for peace and diplomacy for years, but this is a declaration of war in itself. We cannot let this stand." But Daniels, a man who had seen the horrors of conflict firsthand, knew the consequences of war better than anyone. "We're not prepared," he said, pacing behind the council table. "We don't have the fleets to challenge the Empire." "Not yet." "Does it matter?" Senator Derek Wilkes, a fiery proponent of military action, interrupted. "If we don't respond now, we risk letting the Empire think they can push us around. Do we really want to be a footnote in galactic history?" The silence in the room was deafening. Then Daniel slammed his fist down on the table, the sound of it sharp and final. "We can't ignore this. Earth will not stand idly by while our people are slaughtered. Prepare the fleet. We declare war on the Galactic Empire." The decision was made. Within hours, every major military base on Earth was on full alert. The Republic's military began mobilizing, ships, soldiers, and resources flooding into training and preparation. Though humanity's fleet was no match for the Empire's, Earth was determined to make its stand. This war wasn't just about revenge. It was about survival, about sending a message to every species in the galaxy. Never again would humanity be a victim. As Earth's fleet took shape, another layer of urgency settled over the galaxy. Imperial ambassadors to Earth were recalled, and the Empire's own ambassadors on Earth were placed under house arrest. The diplomatic channels between Earth and the Empire were severed. Humanity was now a target, and it wasn't going to wait around to be crushed. President Daniels stood before a crowd of millions, his face grim yet resolute. "They took one of ours. They killed our diplomat, and they'll pay for it. This is our galaxy now, too." With those words, humanity's war had begun. The first blow came swiftly. The Galactic Empire, with its vast military infrastructure, wasted no time retaliating. Within 48 hours of the declaration of war, Imperial forces launched an unprovoked strike against Earth's most prosperous colony, New Vega. The Empire's strategy was clear: crush Earth's spirit by targeting a major symbol of its influence. New Vega was a thriving hub of commerce, culture, and human ingenuity, a perfect target to remind humanity of the Empire's dominance. The attack was brutal. Hundreds of Imperial warships, led by the flagship Vengeance, descended upon the planet like a storm of fire and metal. They arrived without warning, their massive engines tearing through the void, their weapons primed to annihilate anything in their path. New Vega's orbital defenses were primitive compared to the Empire's advanced fleets, and they were overwhelmed within hours. Cities were leveled by orbital bombardments. Entire fleets of civilian ships, desperate to escape, were caught in the crossfire, blasted to pieces before they could jump to hyperspace. The Empire's intent was clear: terrorize Earth into submission. But the Empire had underestimated one crucial element: humanity's resolve. Admiral Ryan Cross, commander of the United Earth Fleet, had been preparing for this moment for years, but no amount of preparation could have fully prepared him for the destruction he witnessed on New Vega. The planet's atmosphere burned as the Empire's warships unleashed hell upon the surface. But as the smoke of the bombardment began to settle, something extraordinary happened. A small fleet of human warships, significantly outgunned and outclassed, appeared from the asteroid belt surrounding New Vega. Earth's military was still in its infancy compared to the Imperial juggernaut, but humanity had something the Empire could never have prepared for: ingenuity and determination. The Resolute, Admiral Cross's flagship, led the charge, a swift and nimble destroyer designed for speed and unconventional tactics. It wasn't as massive as the Empire's dreadnoughts, but it was built for precision. Earth's fleet launched a series of devastating strikes against the Imperial ships, using guerrilla tactics that the Empire's commanders found perplexing. Human ships darted through asteroid fields, evaded pursuit with calculated jumps through subspace, and used hit-and-run tactics that made it impossible for the Empire to gain a decisive advantage. The battle raged for hours, the void echoing with the sounds of war. While the Empire's flagship Vengeance remained out of reach, the humans were not without success. Imperial vessels were damaged and destroyed in pockets across New Vega's orbit. The Empire's surprise attack had failed to achieve its objective of total domination. Humanity had fought back, not just for survival, but with the unyielding fury of a species that would not bow down. On the surface of New Vega, the situation was dire. Millions had already perished, but Earth's forces were coordinating a desperate defense. The planet's main cities lay in ruins, but human resistance groups, uncoordinated at first, began to organize with a newfound determination. The Empire's forces, expecting surrender, now faced an unexpected second front, the resistance of the very people they had come to crush. The Imperial fleet retreated, its losses mounting and morale shattered by the ferocity of humanity's response. For the first time in centuries, the Empire had been made to bleed, and the galaxy began to take notice. The war was only beginning, but humanity had already made its mark. After the failure of the Empire's initial strike on New Vega, the balance of the war began to shift in ways no one had anticipated. The Imperial fleet, despite its overwhelming numbers, was shaken. Earth had shown it wasn't going to cower in the face of the Empire's might. Instead, humanity had taken a page from the Empire's own book. If they couldn't win through sheer force, they would win through cunning and adaptability. Lieutenant Colonel Emma Reeves, a rising star in the United Earth Defense Force, had long championed unconventional warfare. A seasoned veteran of several skirmishes along the Outer Rim, she had seen firsthand the brutal efficiency with which the Empire wiped out entire colonies. But Emma knew the one thing the Empire took for granted: their arrogance. The Empire thought of itself as invincible, and in that overconfidence lay humanity's best hope. Under Emma's leadership, Earth's military began to adopt a strategy of guerrilla warfare. The Empire's fleets, powerful though they were, had grown accustomed to fighting in controlled, predictable engagements. But the humans weren't playing by those rules anymore. Small, highly mobile units began to operate in the shadows, using stealth, sabotage, and speed to strike at key Imperial infrastructure. These forces used everything at their disposal: abandoned ships, debris fields, asteroid belts, and even the broken remnants of Imperial forces they'd encountered in the wake of the first strike. One of Emma's first successes came when her team infiltrated an Imperial supply convoy, traveling between two heavily fortified Imperial stations. The convoy was meant to resupply the fleet on the front lines, but Emma's team had one advantage. They knew the terrain. They had spent months mapping the outer asteroid fields and pinpointing weak points in the Empire's supply routes. In a series of lightning-fast attacks, the human fleet ambushed the convoy, destroying key supply ships, crippling Imperial communications, and stealing vital fuel and resources. The Empire had never faced such a threat. Earth's forces weren't engaging in full-scale battles. They were striking when and where the Empire least expected. Small, stealthy vessels would slip past their sensors, making hit-and-run attacks on supply lines and military installations. Earth's ships, designed for speed and flexibility, could disappear into the vastness of space as quickly as they appeared, making pursuit impossible. But the humans didn't stop there. Emma's tactics extended to psychological warfare. Propaganda networks began circulating across Imperial space, exposing corruption within the Empire and calling out its brutal tactics. The death of Sarah Hayes became a rallying cry for not only humanity but for disenfranchised citizens within the Empire itself. Rebel factions, some of them minor, some already well-established, began to reach out to Earth's forces, offering intelligence and supplies in exchange for protection and support. Soon, whispers of resistance began to grow inside Imperial borders. The same emperor who had once thought humanity weak and easily subdued now had to contend with uprisings within his own territories. The tide was slowly turning, but the empire was far from defeated. Yet, Emma and her team had succeeded in something far more significant than a few battles won. They had created the beginning of a movement that was no longer about surviving, but about fighting for something greater. Humanity's name was becoming synonymous with defiance, and the Empire's reign of fear was starting to crack. And this was just the beginning. As the Imperial fleet continued its advance, it would now have to contend with an unseen enemy, the growing shadow of human resistance. Humanity had learned the art of war the Empire had long forgotten, the power of unpredictability. The war had dragged on longer than anyone expected. The Empire's once formidable fleets were now being harassed on every front, their superiority undermined by humanity's ruthless guerrilla tactics. But it wasn't just Earth's military that was striking back. As the resistance spread across the Empire, something began to shift within the very heart of the Empire itself, an undercurrent of dissatisfaction among the ranks of its elite. General Marcus Drayton, one of the Empire's most decorated officers, had spent his entire life serving the Empire with unwavering loyalty. A towering figure, known for his ruthless efficiency and his cold pragmatism, Drayton had commanded some of the Empire's largest and most decisive military campaigns. But now, sitting in his war room aboard the Despot, a massive warship assigned to suppress a growing insurrection on the planet Vornis, Drayton found himself questioning everything he had ever believed. The Empire's response to the growing human rebellion had been swift and brutal. Entire populations were wiped out in scorched earth campaigns, cities reduced to ash under relentless orbital bombardments. On Vornis, an entire civilian district had been destroyed after a minor insurgent cell had been found in hiding. Children, the elderly, farmers, everyone was punished with indiscriminate violence. As Drayton watched the transmissions of the destruction, something inside him snapped. He had seen atrocities before, but this was different. This wasn't just a military campaign. It was a massacre. And worse yet, he began to see a pattern. The Empire's highest command was no longer interested in victory. They were obsessed with total subjugation, with sending a message of fear to any who might oppose them. This wasn't about maintaining control. It was about breaking the spirit of the galaxy itself. Drayton's mind raced. He had been given orders from above to tighten the noose around Vornis and wipe out the remaining pockets of resistance. But in the privacy of his chambers, he found himself drawn to the reports coming from human forces. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for something greater. And their spirit, their refusal to yield, was something the Empire had never understood. One evening, after a long discussion with his most trusted officers, Drayton made a decision that would alter the course of the war. He ordered a covert transmission be sent to Admiral Ryan Cross of the United Earth Fleet. The message was simple: "We're with you. Prepare for a strategic alliance." It was a gamble, a betrayal that would cost him everything. If word of his defection got out, he would be branded a traitor and hunted down by the Empire's elite enforcers. But in that moment, as he looked out over the stars from his command center, he knew he could no longer be a part of the Empire's madness. The system he had served was rotten to the core, and the galaxy was at a tipping point. For weeks, the message was hidden, encrypted and routed through multiple layers of false channels. Drayton's move was high risk, but his disillusionment had taken root deep within the Empire's ranks. It wasn't just Drayton. Other officers, some as high-ranking as the general, had quietly begun to question their loyalty to the Empire. The cracks in the imperial structure were widening, and those who had once followed the Emperor blindly were now starting to see the truth. The rebellion had ignited something within the Empire's own walls: betrayal. As the transmissions continued, a quiet rebellion within the Empire's military began to take form. For the first time, the Empire's most loyal servants were turning their weapons not on the humans they had once seen as inferior, but on the corrupt, tyrannical leadership they had once sworn to protect. It was only a matter of time before the full scale of the revolt within the Empire became clear, and in that moment of betrayal, Drayton knew the tide had truly turned. The Empire's collapse was inevitable. As word of General Marcus Drayton's defection slowly spread through the Empire's ranks, the implications were profound. In the vast, sprawling machine of the Galactic Empire, Drayton was no small figure. His reputation as a war strategist and his decades of service made him an icon within Imperial military circles. His betrayal would reverberate like an explosion through the command structure. But Drayton's message, delivered in code to Admiral Ryan Cross, was only the beginning. Within days, other high-ranking Imperial officers began to reach out to the humans, offering critical intelligence and promising to aid the resistance in any way they could. It wasn't just a few disillusioned soldiers. It was a wave of defectors, each more desperate than the last to escape the Empire's cruelty. They had all seen the same thing. The Empire, once an indomitable force, was now a brittle shell of itself, driven by the paranoia of an aging emperor and the ruthless ambitions of power-hungry officials. The first of these defectors to make their way to Earth was Colonel Ilara Kor, a former Imperial intelligence officer. Kor, once a trusted member of the Emperor's inner circle, had witnessed firsthand the Empire's darkest secrets, mass atrocities, assassinations, and the brutal silencing of any who posed a threat to the Emperor's rule. Her defection was a direct result of an order she could not obey, one that called for the eradication of an entire planetary population, simply because they had aided the resistance. When she arrived at Earth, she was met by Admiral Cross, General Emma Reeves, and a handful of trusted military officers. She was exhausted, both physically and mentally, but her eyes burned with a fire that was unmistakable. "The Emperor doesn't care about winning the war," she said quietly in the briefing room, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. "He wants to break the galaxy. He wants to crush any semblance of hope. He believes if he can destroy everything, every last rebel, he'll instill fear so deep that no one will dare defy him again." Admiral Cross leaned forward, his hands clasped together. "We know he's ruthless, but we also know he's growing weak. The Empire is fracturing. We've seen the reports." Kor nodded. "The Empire's power is an illusion. The fear that holds it together is starting to crumble. More and more officers are questioning the Emperor's decisions. Many of us have kept quiet for years, but not anymore." The room fell silent. The pieces were falling into place. What had started as a resistance movement, sparked by humanity's fury over the death of Ambassador Sarah Hayes, was now becoming something much larger. The Empire was not just fighting an external enemy, it was fighting itself. The intelligence corps and other defectors brought with them was invaluable. They provided detailed maps of Imperial fleet movements, vulnerabilities in the Empire's military bases, and even insider knowledge of the Emperor's most secret weapons projects. The defectors were no longer just providing information. They were actively aiding in the sabotage of Imperial operations. One of the most significant pieces of intelligence came from Kor herself. She revealed that the Empire had been secretly building a weapon capable of wiping out entire fleets in an instant, a device known only as Project Obsidian. Its purpose was simple, a weapon of such destructive power that it could wipe out human colonies in a single strike, ensuring the Empire's dominance over the galaxy forever. The revelation sent a shockwave through Earth's leadership. This wasn't just a war for territory or resources, it was a war for survival. If the Empire unleashed Project Obsidian, humanity's chances of winning would diminish drastically. But the information was also a gift. The Empire's desperation had led them to expose their most dangerous secret. The time for defensive tactics was over. Now, Earth's forces had to go on the offensive. And they had a new ally in the fight. A crumbling empire, eaten from within by its own corruption, betrayal, and fear. With the information gathered from the defectors, humanity's resolve grew stronger. The Empire's most dangerous weapon, Project Obsidian, was still in its final stages of development on the capital world of Nexus. Earth's leaders knew that if the weapon was completed, it would give the Empire the ability to wipe out entire fleets, and possibly entire planets, in an instant. The stakes had never been higher. President Jack Daniels, Admiral Ryan Cross, and General Emma Reeves stood in the war room, the map of the galaxy spread out before them, illuminated by flickering holograms. The Empire's capital, Nexus, lay at the heart of Imperial space, a symbol of their might and unyielding control. But with the Empire divided, and its leadership under siege from within, this was humanity's moment. If Earth could strike at Nexus, cripple the Empire's military leadership, and destroy Project Obsidian, they might finally end the war on their terms. The operation was dubbed Operation Ironclad. It would be the largest coordinated strike humanity had ever launched. The plan was simple but audacious. Earth's forces, along with the growing number of defectors from the Imperial fleet, would initiate a full-scale assault on Nexus, drawing the bulk of the Empire's military forces into open battle. Meanwhile, a covert team led by Colonel Emma Reeves would infiltrate the Empire's main research facility on Nexus and destroy Project Obsidian before it could be deployed. As Earth's fleet gathered at the edge of Imperial space, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. For the first time, humanity was going to confront the heart of the Empire, and they were determined not to let fear control their actions. Admiral Cross stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his eyes steely and focused as he stared at the incoming fleet of warships. It was a long shot. Nexus was a heavily fortified world, and its defenses were second to none. But the elements were in their favor. The Empire's paranoia had left them spread thin across their territory. Many of their fleets were still recovering from the harrowing losses at New Vega. The human fleet, though outnumbered, had the advantage of surprise. The defectors, led by General Drayton, had provided them with detailed maps of Nexus's orbital defenses, key military installations, and the layout of the capital's most vulnerable spots. They knew exactly where to hit. As the assault on Nexus began, waves of Earth's warships punched through the Empire's defenses, engaging in a brutal space battle that rocked the galaxy. The sheer intensity of the human attack caught the Empire off guard, and for the first time in the war, the Imperial fleet found itself fighting for its survival. But the real danger was on the surface of Nexus itself, where Colonel Reeves and her team moved swiftly through the heart of the Empire's military complex. Reeves, along with a handful of elite human soldiers and defected Imperial engineers, infiltrated the facility housing Project Obsidian. The underground research labs were heavily guarded, but Reeves knew the layout well. They moved quickly, planting explosives at key structural points and disabling the security systems. The deeper they went, the more intense the opposition became. The Empire had already anticipated an assault on the facility, and their forces were ready. The final obstacle came at the heart of the complex, a massive reinforced chamber where Project Obsidian was being housed. Reeves and her team fought tooth and nail to reach it, holding off Imperial guards with a combination of quick strikes and expert teamwork. But time was running out. As they approached the chamber, an alarm blared through the facility, signaling that the weapon was about to be activated. The countdown had begun. In that moment, with only minutes to spare, Colonel Reeves made the call. "Blow it," she ordered. Her team set the charges, and they retreated just as the explosion tore through the facility, ripping Project Obsidian apart and sending the Empire's hopes for ultimate destruction into the void. The blast was felt across Nexus, and for the first time in the war, the Empire was thrown into chaos. As the human fleet continued its assault, the Empire's leadership scrambled to regroup, but the damage was done. Nexus, the seat of Imperial power, was now on the brink of collapse. Admiral Cross's voice crackled over the comms, booming with uncontainable pride. "Operation Ironclad is a success. Nexus is ours." And with that, the unthinkable had happened. Humanity had taken the capital of the Empire. But this was just the beginning. The war had reached its boiling point, The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and humanity had finally proven it was no longer just a bystander in the galaxy's great struggle. Now, they were the ones shaping its future. The fall of Nexus sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The Empire, once an unstoppable force, was now reeling from the loss of its capital. With the destruction of Project Obsidian, the last of its weaponized superweapons, and the fragmentation of its military leadership, the once dominant empire was now on the brink of collapse. But while humanity had delivered a devastating blow, the battle was far from over. The Emperor, shrouded in paranoia and fury, retreated to his most secure citadel on the far-off world of Solari, an ancient fortress planet, rumored to be hidden behind layers of secretive imperial space. From there, he planned to rebuild, to regain control. But his grip on the galaxy was slipping. The Empire's remaining loyalists, though fiercely committed, were scattered and demoralized. Revolts were erupting in every corner of the galaxy, and disillusioned soldiers and officers continued to join the growing rebellion. Even the remaining high-ranking Imperial officials, those who had not defected to the humans, began to consider their options. The very foundations of the Empire were shaking. Admiral Ryan Cross stood on the bridge of the Resolute, looking out at the vast stretch of stars before him. With Nexus taken, Earth's forces were in full control of Imperial space, but the question remained, what would the galaxy look like after the dust had settled? Would they be able to finish what they had started? There's still a lot of work to do, General Emma Reeves said beside him, her voice steady but resolute. The toll of war was evident in her face. Hard lines had formed around her eyes, but the fire within them had never dimmed. We need to make sure this isn't just a victory in name. The Empire is fractured, but it's still dangerous. Ryan nodded. We finish it now. The Emperor might be hiding, but he won't have the strength to fight back much longer. Let's make sure we end this. The final push to Solari was brutal. Human forces, bolstered by defectors from the Imperial ranks, launched a multi-pronged assault on the fortress planet. The battle was nothing short of legendary, an all-out war that spanned both space and ground combat. The Imperial defenses were fierce, but the Empire's once overwhelming fleet was now but a shadow of itself, crumbling under the pressure of human ingenuity and rebellion. On the surface of Solari, Colonel Ilara Kor led the ground assault. Once a loyal officer of the Empire, Kor now fought for humanity's future. Her knowledge of Imperial military tactics proved invaluable as she and her team pushed forward, clearing the path for a final confrontation. As the human forces advanced, the Empire's remaining loyalists began to crumble under the weight of their leader's absence. The Emperor, isolated and betrayed by his own people, was growing desperate. The final clash took place in the heart of the Emperor's citadel. Inside the fortified palace, Emperor Traeger, his face twisted with rage and fear, confronted the humans who had come to bring an end to his reign. Armed with the last of his loyal forces, he fought to maintain control, but it was clear the end had come. Admiral Cross, General Reeves, and Colonel Kor stood at the gates of the Emperor's command chamber. The doors slid open, revealing the tyrant himself, clutching a weapon of last resort, a device capable of unleashing devastation across the galaxy. He sneered, desperate, as he aimed it at them. "You think you can defeat me?" He spat, his voice trembling with fury. "I built this empire. It will not fall to the likes of you." Cross took a step forward, his voice calm but unwavering. "Your empire is already dead, Traeger. It's over." The battle that followed was short, but brutal. In the end, the Emperor, broken and defeated, was captured. The weapon he had held onto so desperately was disarmed by Colonel Kor, who now stood as a symbol of the rebellion's triumph. The galaxy had turned its back on the Empire, and now, with the fall of its last leader, it was free. As the Emperor was led away, General Reeves turned to Admiral Cross, her expression weary but filled with relief. "We did it," she said quietly. "Yes," Cross replied, his voice filled with a quiet pride. We did it. Humanity didn't just survive. We won. With the Empire's fall, a new era began. One of rebuilding, of forging new alliances, and of hope. Earth had shown the galaxy that even in the darkest of times, even against the most insurmountable odds, humanity could rise, fight, and prevail. And the galaxy would never forget that it was humanity, against all odds, that had brought the Empire to its knees.